again, everybody. This is Derek, and I am coming back at you with another Wargaming in miniature video. And in today's video, we're going to continue on with our MeG boot camp. And in today's MeG boot camp, we're going to be hitting chapter 9.6, shooting. Okay, we're going to be talking about shooting at chargers, files that can shoot, the types of shooters, target priorities, arc of fire, dice, slowing effect of firing, casualty removals. All right, so let's get started. Types of shooters. There are 4 shooting ability grades that are independent of fighting quality. Okay, because in your army list, your troops have stats, and the stats will have their quality, but that's like their fighting quality. And then in the next column, you'll see where it has shooting skill or shooting quality, and there are 4 grades. One is skilled, which are excellent shooters. You know, I would probably call it excellent, but they call it skilled. Experienced, that is, they know what they're doing. Then there is unskilled, and they're not good at it. And then there's, finally, charge-only shooters. They only shoot when they're charged or they're charging, or like if they're doing the charging or if they're charged. Okay. The first 3 of these, that's skilled, experienced, unskilled, are termed missile focused, in that they treat missile shooting as a material part of their fighting ethos. Charge-only shooters and troop with the integral shooter's characteristic, they have missile weapons, but it's not their main fighting ethos. So it's kind of like it's not even a secondary, it's more of a tertiary, because you might have cavalry that use short spears, right? That's their normal fighting, but they also have a stat line that says skilled javelins. So they're not there. They would be considered missile focused. Shooting at chargers. 1. Which files can shoot at chargers and targets making countercharge and intercept response is covered in 9.4, right? Which is a chapter we had already covered. Basically, it's 1 base width. That's essentially any of them that come within 1 base width of your shooter can be shot at in the charge phase, or if they cross. The shooting mechanism is the same for shooting at chargers or shooting at the shooting phase, which will be covered later in the video. Any file that shoots in the charge phase cannot shoot in the shooting phase. You can only shoot once, including those having done a skirmish response. So if you do a skirmish response and you shoot and scoot, as it were, you can't later shoot because you've already shot. Even those skirmishers that skirmish but don't shoot, they still can't shoot later. Okay, files that may shoot in the shooting phase. All shooting takes place as a file rolling a single die to shoot at a target base. You roll a death die for each file that you shoot with. That's a lot like melee, right? Files melee and files shoot. Targets must be visible, in bold, to be shot at. See the terrain table for visibility distances for various pieces of terrain. Files with missile weapons and skilled, experienced, or unskilled, not the charge-only one, may shoot at target bases that are in range and arc. Unless, here's some unlesses. Unless they shoot or make a response like skirmish or runaway in the charge phase. Because if you've already shot, you can't shoot again in the shooting phase. If you make a pursuit in the charge phase, you're too busy. If you're in combat and will be fighting frontally or as a supporting file in melee combat, you are very busy. If you've made a charge, intercept, or countercharge, you are busy and will have already shot if you have the shoot and charge characteristic. And finally, you will not if you are part of a hesitant ally and have not been attacked yet. As you know, hesitant allies, once they're attacked, then they become unhesitant, right? So, good to go. Files that may shoot. 4. Troops are not forced to shoot. They may choose not to, which may be beneficial if an enemy hesitant ally is in range, or if you're hiding in ambush. Yeah, you might not want to shoot a hesitant. That way you don't activate them or stop them from being hesitant. So, yeah. Okay, target priorities and arcs. This is a whole page. Troops may only shoot at targets who are ahead of them, have some part of their base ahead of the line extending their front edge. This is your front edge, ahead of them. For a target to be a valid, both front corners of the shooting file must be able to draw an uninterrupted line to some part of the target base without passing through friends, enemy, or terrain that blocks sight. Okay, so just to go super fast, you draw a line from, let's talk about this file here. You draw a line from this corner, no problem, nothing's in the way. You draw a line from this corner, nothing's in the way. Almost like you're making a path. Number 3, shooting files must is underlined, target the nearest, underlined, base in the target file. As a result, they will generally shoot at the front file unless they are shooting at them from behind their rear rank. Where either line passes through terrain that would provide cover shooting, it still occurs, but the target may claim cover. Remember these two lines? If either one of them goes through cover, the target gets cover. If any enemy bases are within one base width and directly ahead and also directly in the front, then a file must shoot at whichever such base covers most of the frontage of the shooting file. If equal, the shooter may choose which base to shoot at. Yeah, so if this guy was split this unit directly down the center, now this guy can choose. But if this is over just slightly, this guy can't choose. He has to shoot at him because he covers the majority of them. You got to shoot it pretty much. You got to be straightforward. It's pretty easy to figure out who you have to shoot at. But yeah, if it's over 50%, then you got to choose him. Otherwise, most files have a 1 base width arc of fire and may concentrate fire by choosing their target file by file within that arc. So remember, like if this is a shooting unit and I can put that like directly in front of this file can shoot into that area, right? Same with this. This guy can shoot over there. And same with this. This guy can shoot into that area. Pretty straightforward. Artillery have a 2 base width arc of fire when shooting at targets beyond 4 base widths. If this was, let's say, a ballista, and he was shooting it really far away, this 1 base width, once it gets beyond 4 base widths, it grows to 2 base widths. But that's only when shooting at targets beyond 4 base widths. So if they're 4 base widths or less, you would still only consider their arc of fire to be 1 base width, right? All the way out. But if it's beyond that, and I believe that you're concerned about that because you're looking at intervening terrain, units, any kind of cover that might be provided. Bases that are contributing to a combat cannot be targeted. Frontal contact or in ranks that are contributing, except that supporting files can be shot at with a single downgrade in color. If shooting at the front base, all other bases may be targeted freely. Okay, so you can't shoot into combat and if they're base to base, right? But if it's a supporting file and they're supporting a combat, you can shoot at them if you want. You can shoot at them, but you'll get, your die will be downgraded by 1. Okay, arc of fire. This is a table. Firers may only shoot ahead, forward, right? Okay. With targets less than or equal to 1 base width, files must shoot at targets most directly ahead if they exist. Artillery shooting at over 4 base width may choose targets within 2 base width of directly ahead. I might be reading this wrong. I might have to clarify this, but it sounds to me like when you're shooting, you always shoot directly ahead. Okay, with some exceptions. Okay, 1 base width files must shoot at targets most directly ahead if they exist. Artillery shooting at over 4 base widths may choose targets within 2 base widths of directly ahead. So, over here or over there. Okay, I'm starting to gather. All others at greater than 1 base width choose any target within a 1 base width of directly ahead. Okay, so pretty much I'm going to try to kind of verify this a little bit better. Okay, so everybody shoots straight ahead. That's everybody. Everybody shoots directly straight ahead. If there's a target in that area, that's who they have to shoot at. If the target is within 1 base width, then you can choose it. Everyone can extend their base width arc 1 base width on either side of directly ahead. So, like that, right? That's 1 base width of the center. All others at greater than 1 base width, choose any target within a 1 base width of directly ahead. Yeah, so there or there. Where artillery has if it's over 4 base width that you're shooting, artillery can choose 1, 2, 3, 4. Once you get over 4 base widths, artillery can shoot at 2 base widths of directly ahead. Okay, that's interesting. I'm not going to make a firing template that looks like that. To me, that seems ridiculous. I don't know. I think it should be at an angle. I think artillery fire shouldn't be squared off like that. I think it should be more like, if that's what they meant, it should be something like that, in my opinion. But that's not how the rules are written. I might play like this, or make a template that's on one side like that, and then you can flip it over depending on, how you want to fire. Okay, I've got an example set out here, directly like it is in the book, so that we can work through this. Because that target priority and shooting arcs is a little bit, I don't know if I like the way it's worded. Okay, imagine these being javelin mounted troops, and imagine these being javelin men. These are skilled shooters. This is an experienced shooter. And then we've got a couple of legionaries. We got superior and average. Okay, this file can shoot at either base of this, or either file of this legionary unit. Why? Because it's further than 1 base width away, so it's not restricted by the shooting directly ahead, and both bases, this base and this base, are both within 1 base width of that center of the firing arc, right? Or you're directly ahead. So if I was to draw a line directly ahead of this file, and I was to measure 1 base width to the right of that line, this file does fall in that. Can this file, both corners, trace a line to that unit? Yes and yes. So it can fire. This file can choose to shoot at A or B. Okay, A being this file and B being this file. This corner can trace a line to this unit because you do not have to trace corner to corner. I don't have to trace this line like this. I can trace this line straight ahead, and I can trace this line so the arrows would be narrowing, avoiding this unit, if that makes sense, right? So I didn't want to imply that your firing arc had to be 1 base width wide, like this, from corner to corner. I didn't want you to think that, because it can be like this. That corner can touch that base, anywhere on that base, and this corner can touch anywhere on that base as well. So you can definitely shoot him. There's nobody in the 1 base width directly ahead, so you're not obligated to shoot at the guy directly ahead. But because he is within one base width of directly ahead, he may shoot there. And yes, he can hit that and he can hit that. That's not a problem. So it says this file can shoot at either, A or B. These three files have to shoot directly ahead as range under one base width. 1 at B and 2 at C. Okay, so he's over 50% of this base. This legionary is over 50% of this base, so he has to shoot them. Plus he's within one base width. Same thing with him. Now, he's only partially over this base, but this base has nobody else to shoot at. He has to shoot at them because they are within one base width. This file is in ARC to shoot C. That's this file. So he can shoot him. And it's not anywhere, he's within one base width of this guy's front line, one base width off. That's this guy. He can shoot him. Finally, this file is out of ARC and has no targets because his one base width front file, and he can shoot one base to either left or right, which would only be units in this. He can't shoot there. Okay, so far so good. Range and depth of shooters. I'm going to put something on the screen over here so that you can see what I'm talking about. It shows ranges in base widths. So if you see shooting ranges in base widths, infantry and battle wagons have their range, and mounted and chariots have their range. And then you look at the weapon, and the weapons have different base widths. So javelins only shoot 2 base widths, right? So not super far, right? Okay. Sling and darts can shoot 3 base widths. Okay, it's a little bit further than a javelin. The bow can shoot 4 base widths. And the crossbow, also 4 base widths. And then if you look at the power bow, which is pretty much like the English longbow, 5 base widths. Then you have light and heavy artillery. So that would be defined in your army list. And then you look over on the right side where it says shooting depth. So you have a tug in loose or close, and then you've got a sug or a tug in skirmish. So if you have a tug in loose, you need to be in 2 ranks to get your full effect, or loose or close. You need to be in 2 ranks to get your full effect. 1 rank, so if you only have a single file, reduced effect. Now, skirmishers, you'll notice they have an asterisk, but it says they've got to be 3 ranks, like these guys. These guys are in 3 ranks, so they'll get full effect, and this 2 rank will get reduced effect. Artillery only need to be in 1 rank. And if you look at the bottom of that table, it does say you change the asterisk, basically. You change the 3 and the 2 to a 2 and a 1 if you're playing Magna. which is the mid-range scale. So ranges are measured from the front of the file firing, even if the front bases are not those firing. Because some formations will have mixed formations where you'll have like spears in the front and bows in the back. Plus you'll have like barricades and obstacles and stuff like that in front of the file. Measure from the front base. Files fire at reduced effect if they have insufficient depth and suffer a die level downgrade when they fire. So if he's got two ranks or one rank, he still gets the reduced die because he's not 3, which is the full effect. Overhead firing. Troops may always fire over ranks of the same UG with no reduction in effect, but a single file may only ever roll one shooting die. So a 4 deep bow cannot shoot twice. Okay, and one of the reasons why that is let's say you got your spearmen up front and then you got your 2 bows. Well, you're considered to have a 2 rank bow, not 3 rank bow, because one of them's not a bow. Some artillery, like catapults and bolt shooters, may shoot over friends as long as their target is more than 2 base widths away from any friends. If you got a unit over here, a friend over here, the catapult here can shoot as long as there's a 2 base width gap there. Let's reread that. Some artillery, catapults, and bolt shooters may shoot over friends as long as their target is more than 2 base width away from your friends. Okay, so as long as there's enough room, you can shoot over. And files on higher ground may shoot over up to 2 ranks of friends, even if a different UG. If they are higher up the slope and at least 1 base width behind those friends. So if you've got a hill, you got troops on the hill, as long as you're more than 1 base width away from your interposing friends, you can shoot over them. But only if they're in 2 ranks or less. Because you can only shoot over 2 ranks of friends. All right, now here's the important part. Determining which dice to roll. When shooting, every file starts with a white die. So this is a little different than melee. Remember, melee started with a green die, and green die has a potential for a skull. But shooting starts with a white die, and there are no skulls on the white die. Shooting dice is then upgraded in favorable circumstances, like against a vulnerable target, skilled shooters, against average or poor targets, and downgraded for unfavorable ones, shooting while doing a runaway, against troops with full armor, or with insufficient ranks in a shooting file. You will find, okay, this is a little different than melee. Charge and melee, you only have ups, right? You have claims. You make claims, it adds to your value. You compare it to your opponent, who also has things to add to his value. Now, you are adding and subtracting based on the situation. So it's basically the same, but different. Because in melee, you both roll dice, and so there's ups and claims that will affect that. But in shooting, it's just you shooting at a target and they just have to take it. Unless they shoot back, but that's still not melee. To work out which die to roll, simply start with a white die, boop, as a starting point, and look at the chart to see when you go up or down. Here's the table. Okay. Skill versus quality. You can either, okay, and there's two columns. You got the upgrade and downgrade. Skilled versus poor or average. Experienced versus poor. Okay, so the target has a troop quality, has nothing to do with his shooting ability. So you're taking your shooting ability versus the target's quality, training, his morale. Now remember, this guy is average, he's superior. This guy is experienced? It is. Experienced. So, experienced versus poor, no effect. Okay. Downgrade, if you're unskilled versus average, unskilled versus average, superior, or exceptional. So basically, you can kind of think of it like their fighting ability on a level of 1 to 4, and then as long as you're better than your opponent's quality on a scale of 1 to 4, then you get that plus. And if you're below it, you get a minus. Okay, pretty straightforward. Shooter depth. Okay, we've already figured out what the minimum ranks are so that you can get the depth. If you're below that, if you make a runaway move, that's a minus. So skirmishing is when you back up facing your opponent. Running away is when you turn around and run. Okay, the target, the type of target you're shooting at. Artillery versus a battle wagon, because it's easy to hit, or a chariot or an elephant, you get pluses. Downgrade is artillery shooting at skirmishers, or shooting at the front rank of a supporting file. Armor. Sometimes armor will help the target, right? Anything except artillery shooting at unprotected at under 1 base width. Okay, I'm not sure where the com belongs. Because any except artillery, so that's basically everybody but artillery. Shooting at unprotected tugs or unprotected sugs at 1 base width. So does that mean, and I think it means, when you're shooting at an unprotected tug, you upgrade it. But to get that bonus on a sug, you have to be close. And one reason why I would think that is the case is because they're spread out and harder to hit. And you get a downgrade unless you're artillery or a firearm firing against armored horse. Okay, armor also has it's a downgrade, any except artillery or firearms or power bow or crossbow at greater than equal to 1 base, shooting at fully armored foot or fully armored elephants. Okay, so what they're saying there is it doesn't apply to artillery, firearms, power bow, or crossbow, but it applies to everybody else. If you're over 1 base width, you get a minus if your target is fully armored. But they're saying that artillery, firearms, power bow, and crossbow don't care if you're fully armored. And that's fully armored foot, actually. Okay, weapon. So the weapon you're using might have some effect. Power bow versus cavalry, or chariots get a bonus. And darts over 2 base widths, darts only have a 3 base width range, so if you're at over 2 base widths, you get a downgrade. Cover, that's going to protect the target from shooting. Target in cover unless shot at by artillery. So what they're saying is, if artillery shoots at somebody in the cover, it doesn't care. Artillery doesn't care about nothing. Looks like artillery is unaffected by almost everything. And then the S result equals a wound, which they call that a white plus, right? So an S result will equal a wound if skilled shooter versus superior target. Foot crossbow standing to receive, shooting at those charging them. Okay, so skilled shooters are going to be able to convert that S to a wound only versus the superior target. That almost doesn't make sense to me, because what if a skilled shooter... Okay, I was getting ready to say, but what if you shoot at somebody weaker or somebody stronger than superior? Well, that's on the first line. Skill versus quality. Because if you're shooting at skilled versus poor or average, then you're getting a better die. So you're not going to be rolling a white, so it doesn't matter. It's a plus, basically. Okay. And if you go below black, which means you go down 1 from white, right? If you go below black, roll the black die with slowing effects only. So if that pops up, it's not a wound, it's a slowing effect. A skull and a sword causes a kill and wounds respectively, just as with combat. The difference is that it is very hard to get a red die when shooting. Skilled power bow at an unprotected cavalry target would do it just barely. The special S effect for shooting is that it slows down a target by causing confusion in the enemy ranks or making them hide behind their shields and advance with care, stumbling over casualties. We call this the slowing effect of fire. All shooting is simultaneous, so any base kills shoots before it is removed. Usually it makes no difference and you can roll all shooting dice together. Some shooting causes a wound on an S. So we're talking about the white plus. S results equal wound. Okay, so it's not just white. An S result equals a wound if it's a skilled shooter versus a superior target, or foot crossbow standing to receive shooters. Okay, that doesn't have to be white. Some shooters cause a wound on S results on their dice. Crossbow standing to receive a charge gets this bonus. So do skilled shooters versus a superior target. Skilled crossbows versus an average or poor target would get this result as a color upgrade. Yeah, we kind of already went over that. Okay, good. Okay, the slowing effect of fire. We kind of went over that just slightly. The final piece of shooting is the slowing effect of fire. This is an extremely new invention and is how MeG simulates skirmishers slowing down opposing troops. Not by being there, but by shooting them. Whenever you shoot, add up the total number of skulls, X's, and S's, all of those, on an UG from all shooters, and compare the total to the width of the target's frontage in files. If you get a lot of hits on a narrow frontage, you cause a lot of chaos and slow down the enemy more specifically. Hits equal or greater than half the width is slowed down by 1. Equal or greater than half the width. Hits equal or greater than the width is slowed down by 2. So let's say this unit here gets hit by 1. 1 is equal to half of its width, so it would be slowed down by 1. But hits equal to or greater than its width of 2 would be slowed down by 2. So half is 1, the full is 2. Hits equal to or greater than double the width is slowed down by 3. So for this file to be slowed down by 3, it would have had to have taken 6 hits. No, double. 4 hits. Artillery and firearms cause extra chaos. In addition to the above, every S on the die causes an additional 1 base width slowing effect. So, 2 S's result from an artillery on a 2 wide UG slows it by 4. Okay, hypothetically, let's say artillery fires at this and gets 2 S's. Because it equals the width, that slows it down by 2. And every hit from artillery does an extra slowdown. So 1, 2, add 2 more, 4. Be slowed down by 4. Yikes. Generals who are within 2 base widths of whoever's getting slowed down can prompt through fire by spending cards for an action in the charge or movement phase to recover movement distance for any movement, whatever the cause of the slowing, using shield cover, cab test, or enemy shooting. This represents a nearby general pushing the troops forward. A yellow card gets back 1 base width, a red card gets back 2 base widths of lost movement distance. And remember, a general with an UG can upgrade that card. A block charge is shot at as individual UGs with each slowed normally, but is prompted through fire as a single charge, and any block move is treated the same way. So if I was moving this as a block and this unit got slowed down and this unit got slowed down and I prompted through fire, it would apply to all the slowdown. The entire block moves at the speed of the slowest UG in the block. We know that. So if a block charge of 3 cavalry UGs has 1 slowed by 2 base widths, then the entire charge is now a 3 base width charge. Prompting through fire on the block is applied to the entire block move. Okay, so if he gets slowed and he gets slowed, all you do is you're figuring out what the slowest unit is. Okay, I'm with that. So it's not really slowing individuals, you're slowing the block. Okay, then it gives me a little table, and it says, total your skulls, swords and arrows, and S's, and compare them to the width of the target. If an UG receives 1/2, it loses 1. If it loses equal, it loses 2. And if it loses double, it loses 3. Generals in 2 base widths can recover 1 with a yellow or 2 with a red, prompting through fire. And artillery and firearms, every S is automatically 1 additional base width. Okay, perfect. Whenever you get a slowing result, place a marker with your UG to record this. Okay, there are these tokens here that MeG has produced with these little arrows on them, and they scale them. Like this is a 1 because it has 1 arrow, and this is a 2. Guess why? It has 2 arrows, and this is a 3 because it has 3 arrows. So you can, and because they're arrows, that kind of tells you it has something to do with shooting. And so you could say, okay, they're slowed by 2, he's slowed by 1, etc., etc. Whenever you get a slowing result, place a marker with the UG to record this until they move. This number of base widths is then deducted from the movement distance of their next move, and outcome moves. And the marker is removed once the slowing effect has been applied. So it's not like a permanent minus. It only applies to their next or current move. Slowing only applies to the first move of a double move. So let's say the Romans drilled, do a double move. They get their 3, but they got shot and it reduced them by 2. So they'll only move 1, and then on their second move, they can get their full 3 back. Any action that has a limit on its distance, the speed is applied to that limit rather than the maximum move distance. If you have any reduction, you cannot do an M5 full ahead and shift unless you recover it to full distance. Because you can always do the half shift, that's free. But to do the full shift, you have to pay for it with the card. And you can't get that free base width shift unless you actually have your full movement available. Remaining slow markers are always removed prior to the start of the next turn. Note, therefore, that those that come from cab tests due to a sacked camp at subphase 6.3 potentially stay for the entire next turn as they are deliberately after SP 6.1. Okay, we're going to talk about casualty removal, and then we're going to go over my little example up here. Okay, casualty removal. We have 2 conventions for shooting, and it is up to the shooter to choose which to use. The shooter can choose to roll all dice for an UG at the same time, in which case, take the bases that are nearest to the shooting UG whenever a kill occurs, and then move bases files forward to maintain the target's formation. Okay, I would just pull them off the back, but you get the idea. Or the shooter can choose to roll for files one at a time, shooting at each file's target and then remove killed bases as they occur. This can have a different shooting result from one if the target UG has bases of different vulnerabilities. If you roll the dice together, you have committed to 1 and cannot go back to 2. Example: some Chinese archers are shooting at some samurai from the side, and the shooting files have different targets. The samurai are a tug of 9 bases and 3 bases of superior samurai in the front rank and 6 bases of poor Ashugaru followers behind them. There must be a mixed tug. The Chinese player chooses first to shoot at the poor targets, getting a dice upgrade to green, and gets an X for a wound. He then shoots at the samurai with another file, and this time a white die. He gets another wound, and this samurai base is removed. Because remember, 2 wounds equal a base, and you always remove the current target. Just like in Melee. I love it when mechanisms for different phases are the same with just some different modifiers. I love that. Okay, here's the big example. That's why I got these figures out. It's actually a fairly complicated example. Let's work through it. So here is a full example of shooting from an earlier situation with these guys, these mounted javelins, foot javelins, superior, average, experienced, skilled, and skilled. The Romans have shield cover and use this everywhere to hide behind their large scutum shields for protection. You know, like the tortoise. This upgrades them to fully armored. So everywhere, the Numidians go down a color for that. And each Roman tug has got 1 base width slow before any shooting. Okay, with this example, they're jumping like 30 pages, but I'm going to go ahead and jump just to read shield cover, mainly for myself and to help explain here. Shield cover is one of the abilities. Shield cover represents troops with large shields who are able to lock them together for protection against missiles. The Roman testudo is the ultimate version, but many troops with large shields could do this. Similar, the Romans were adept at doing so without forming formal testudo, which were generally for sieges. Files may choose to use shield cover when shot at in any shooting phase. They choose to do so before shooting dice are rolled. The shooting player must inquire before rolling dice. Bases that have used shield cover this turn may not shoot unless specified by an exception. UGs with any bases using shield cover suffer a 1 base width slowing that will affect them in movement thereafter. This says place a die as usual. Well, I'm not going to do that. I'm going to place a slowing effect token on them. Shield cover increases the target's armor level by 1 from unprotected to protected, or from protected to fully armored. Okay, Romans normally start with protected, that's why they're fully armored. Shield cover cannot be used in the charge phase. No, shield cover cannot be used in the charge phase, nor by any base engaged in combat, either frontally or as a supporting file. Shield cover can be used when shot at from the flank or rear. Cannot be used in the charge phase. Well, normally you're going to be using shield cover to protect yourself from shooting, but I guess if I'm charging with these guys and these guys are doing the shoot and scoot, I couldn't use shield cover to protect me as part of my charge. This upgrades them from fully armored, so everywhere the Numidians go down a color for that. And each Roman tug has got a 1 base width slow before shooting. Okay, this example is done differently, so it's kind of a little hard for me to figure it out, but I'm going to. Remember, all shooting starts with a white die. That's where the base is. And then you either go up or down from there. We're going to work from left to right, down to black, because they're fully armored due to the shield cover. And it says they roll an S. Okay. An S is a wound on this unit because it is a skilled shooter versus a superior target. So they get a wound. It shows this file firing at this unit. Down for shield cover, but back up for skilled versus average. So it goes back to white. He rolls a wound, and I'll give him a wound. This guy is experienced. He only has 2 ranks. It becomes not just a black die, but what they call a sub-black die, which means it can only do slowing effects. It'll do no damage and can only do slowing effects. So the next one is down 1 because of the full armor, but it does have the 3 ranks, so it's only the down 1. It would have a black die. It doesn't do anything. This one would be exactly the same because it's exactly the same as that. And this one happened to roll an S, which will be counted towards slowing effects. Remember, this file can't shoot anything, but this file, down for shield cover, but back up for skilled versus average. So it's normal. It rolls a wound. So because it's the second wound, we take off a base. So far, so good. Now there are 3 wound effects. Remember, this one shot there, this S shot there, and this shot there. So 3 slowing effects is more than the 2, but not double. So that adds 2 more to the slowing effect with the one it already had. Gives it a total of 3 slowing effects. So let's read the example. Oh, this wound, I should talk about this. This wound from here, where'd the wound come from? Oh, the skilled versus superior. This S was converted to a wound against them. That's why he has a wound. But with 1 S, that is half of his files. So this 1 would be converted to a 2, and he slowed with a wound. Okay, so now let's read the example. Taking the superior legionaries, there is just 1 black, that's this guy shooting at them, and the S converts to a wound for skilled against superior. They had 1 slow from using shield cover, and that is another from shooting. The end result for them is a wound and slowed by 2 base widths. Okay, we're good. We're on it. Okay, the average legionaries are being subjected to concentration of shooting. Shield cover takes every file down a color. But skilled versus average takes it back up for the cavalry. The infantry file that has only 2 ranks is down another to sub-black, and its die will do no damage and can only create slowing effects. The 2 wounds from there and from there, okay, from there and from there, kill a base, and the 3 total hits, because we count that, slows by 2 base widths. So with the 1 base width from shield over added, I'm sure it's shield cover, I'm sure it's typo, they are slowed by 3 base widths and stationary, because heavy infantry has a 3 movement. Well, that was shooting. I think the die rolling, the ups and the downs, won't be too hard if you've got your chart directly in your face telling you what all the ups and downs are. So that shouldn't be a problem. And then you know that you always fight and shoot and charge and everything else with one die per file. So that's no problem. The most complicated thing in shooting is the arc of fire, is what it seems like to me. Trying to figure out who can shoot at what. Yeah, the one base width wide firing arc plus one base width on either side, that's pretty straightforward. And then the artillery, over 4 base width range, it expands to 2 base widths to either side. And the only other thing is, if you're within 1 base width, you have to shoot at your target, closest target, basically. Okay. Well, thanks for coming out and checking out the shooting part. The next video as part of this MeG boot camp is routes and pursuits. And it looks like routes and pursuits is going to be a very short video. It's only a couple of pages in the rules. And then cab tests and recovering wounds will probably be included in that, just to make a full video. All right, I will see you in 9.7.